So what'd you think first of the movie? Because I loved it. Welcome to the Manspace podcast. We're your hosts, Doctors Matt Brown and Rob Porter, and clinical therapist Mike Porter. Welcome, spacemen and Barbie lovers around the world. Dozens of them all over the world.
There's probably lots of Barbie fans.
Yeah, probably more than
there are spacemen.
How many spacemen do you think are also Barbie fans?
Fewer.
fewer.
I mean, per capita.
One. Well, how many of us are in the room?
Well, I'm a Barbie fan.
3. Matt hasn't seen it, so 2.
He has seen it.
Oh, you have.
And I will do you one better. I don't
He
know.
dressed up for it.
No. I have probably seen all of the animated Barbies.
This one was going to be to the point, but then I was reading more about Bell Hooks, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go on forever.
Who is Bell Hooks?
Oh, she wrote a book called Feminism is for Everybody. I read it when I was in grad school. Admittedly, my thinking was with feminism, like, I mean, it's always so like, we're going to cram this down your throat and women power. And I was like, they're dumb. And then I read this book and I was like, oh, she's right. Feminism is for everybody. Let's just start. We don't need to recap Barbie because at this point, if we're honest, A, everyone's seen it, and B,
Or they're not going to see it, so it won't matter.
yeah, and or B, everyone's already read about it and talked about it. What I like to think is here on the Manspace, we're like Apple. Everyone else will do it wrong first, and we'll come in and make it better. Because I read through a bunch of like critiques of this, and I was like, no. Like I was getting annoyed at some stuff, even some stuff that started to get at this idea that of what I think the message was. I feel like they got kind of close and they veered back off again into traditional tropes, we'll say, of male versus female. So what'd you think first of the movie? Because I loved it. I had some issues with it at various points because I think I went in with a little bit of like, I'd heard this stuff.
Yeah.
That like, this is anti-male. And so I was kind of like, I was looking for the places where we looked like morons, and there were plenty of places where we looked like morons.
Yeah.
Yeah, but ironically, less so. But there were times where I thought Barbies look like morons too. Like,
Yes.
to me, it was more like, well, sure, they're dolls.
Okay,
They
yeah.
weren't hiding what they were.
Right, but
Yes, like it was probably more towards the Kens all looked like idiots.
also all the adult males in the real world were idiots.
That's true.
Like 100% pretty much idiots.
They were.
But I think there's a different reason behind that than
The
just
FBI
men are
agent
idiots.
was okay.
I feel like there were a few, but it was the ones that were more clearly identified as safe.
You guys finished last.
I can't remember the guy's name that originally got the call from the FBI agent, but I mean, he was pretty on the ball. There were a few characters that I think came out a little bit more that way, but
I do like, for sure, like Will Ferrell's CEO and the rest of the board of Mattel. Like, they all did. And even I only know the actress's name, America Ferrera. Her husband.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
Who at first I leaned over to Lisa and I was like, dude, it's Mary from Lord of the Rings. right after his first little phone call scene. Then when he was in the car, I was like, oh, it's not Mary.
He's very
but
he's very beige.
Yeah.
Like he's very forgettable.
He is very,
which is there is a sub message in that of like that I could say the two men in the movie that I can think of then, those two, Alan and the husband, who aren't necessarily buying into this bigger picture, are beige and boring and meaningless.
Although the fight scene with
Michael
Ken,
Cera,
fantastic.
When he's fighting off all the construction Kens or whatever, yeah, that was hilarious. What he said, something
I can wear his clothes.
I love Michael Cera so much. So let me tell you, well, anything you didn't like, I will say I think Margot Robbie and Ryan Reynolds both did a phenomenal job.
Ryan Gosling.
Dang, what did I say? Ryan Reynolds? I just always think about him.
Hope.
Hey, Ryan, come on our show.
Although, let's be honest, I'd take Ryan Gosling on our show too.
Me too. That guy is so dry when he tells a story.
I know.
Nothing phases him.
Dude, it is so funny.
My first impression was like, you guys remember the show Manifest?
Yes.
Oh, I never watched it, but yeah, I know what it is.
So I got a ways into it and I was like, there are so many really important plot lines going on right now that I'm like, my head's exploding because like, I feel like this needs to be its own show and this needs to be its own show. So at first, like, that's kind of and that's what people told me. Like, it's just kind of all over the place, you know.
Oh, the Barbie movie?
Yeah, I mean, you've got like this mother-daughter thing emerging. You've got like this patriarchy thing. You've got like two separate worlds. You've got magic. You've got like all sorts of stuff. And so, but I agree with you. Like, I think that at first it's like, I mean, I could see where it would be really easy to get like very stuck into the argument that they're portraying, you know, and get like super emotional about that. But I will say, I think as a result of the work we've done, like I felt extremely differentiated watching it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I felt a little bit like watching, like, hey, guys, it's just a movie. Like, it's a story they're telling, and sure, there's a message in it. Most people don't make a movie without some sort of message in it. So it's okay. It's just a different message. Like, I don't have to be really upset by it.
Well, and I mean, like, when I went to see it, I hadn't read anything about it on purpose. Like, I knew what some people were saying, vaguely, but I hadn't read anything yet. I just knew what people were saying. But part of me thought, first of all, it's a Greta Gerwig movie, right? Who she very typically does strong, like very strong women in her shows.
She cut all the men out of Little Women,
right? I mean,
what is there, one in there? You know.
So I'm like, what did you expect from Greta Gerwig? In fact, at first I thought, how's this going to be a comedy?
Yeah, although Noah Baumbach was part of it, so
which actually I think because I didn't catch that the first time. I've seen it twice now.
Yeah,
I didn't catch it the first time that he co-wrote the script and stuff, and I thought,
and maybe it was more her than
probably, and it could have been, but I think, I appreciated the fact that she actually wrote it with a man for like, what's your perspective on this? Because there were some things that I assume we'll get into at some point where
no, we will not.
Well, too bad.
Land planes around here where
the guys, where I thought, they're just kind of hinting at what the male experience is like. And you're seeing it in different ways where, like, I had a lot of sympathy for the Kens at various points through the movie where I thought, they're kind of nailing that. And I was really impressed. And then when I saw that Noah Baumbach helped write, I thought, that's probably why they were nailing it so well. Like, I'm not saying Greta Gerwig couldn't, but I appreciated that it was a male was helping to write the male experience.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the Barbie world, or whatever the crap they called it,
Barbie Land.
Like, obviously they're saying this is like a made up place, right? But I do think that, like, as you take both perspectives, it's like, you know, my world sometimes feels like this, my world sometimes feels like that, you know, as you contrast them. But freaking Matchbox 20 song.
Dude, that was so rad.
I remember that song, and I was like, I never really delved deep into the lyrics when I heard it when it came out, you know, but I was like, one, I can't stand that dude's voice.
Me too.
And man, I hate that band. But so I read it and I was like, I mean, the hard part is, I think a lot of male insecure behavior is dominance oriented. And that's where like it, obviously you just have to say stop.
Right.
But then you don't get down to the deeper message, which I think they were getting at, where it's like, I feel completely powerless in this, you know, in this part of our relationship.
Yeah, right.
And how do I communicate that, you know, in really ineffective ways, obviously. Right. But just like the desire to be like, I want to be the one that rejects you. Right. I want to be the one that, and just kind of like, like all of the Kens with guitars, just like, let's sing this for 4 hours.
Look into your eyes.
And I think,
I like they said, sing at you.
Yeah. I think a lot of the things we've talked about with sex, end up feeling that way for men. And again, the way that you deal with it it's horrible, right? Like, that's a horrible way to deal with the feelings, but like the sentiment, I think, rang true.
Yeah. Fun fact about that song, by the way, the song is actually written from, it's a woman speaking. Like when Matchbox 20 says, the first thing is she says, and then all of it is her.
Oh, really?
Oh my gosh, seriously?
So when he wrote the song, that's a woman talking the whole time.
Really?
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, I don't dive deep into...
to my point, I guess when I think about that, like, that's the thing that I really, like, my girls were all like, what did you think? You know, because their experience has been, everybody their age loves it.
Yeah.
Right. And just one generation up, people are kind of like, yeah, there's some problems or something, right? And so I think they were probably anticipating that from me too. But like, honestly, like the first 3/4 of the movie, like I just felt sad. Like I felt like, man, like we have continuously just exploited each other's insecurities.
Yeah.
And created like horrible situations for each other. And we're capable of creating so many good things as men and women, right? Together. And
now you're getting to it.
Yeah. I just felt like, and so, yeah, that was that I related that. They were like, yes. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I guess that's what you were trying to say. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, cause I think my girls especially are really tired of like gender wars, but also like don't know how to talk about it without using the same dialogue that generates the gender wars. Right. And so, yeah, it was interesting, but.
Well, that's the, well, I'll read first a couple things that I pulled out that I was like, I don't feel like you guys watched the same movie as me. One was about actually that it was happening in China too. They were saying it's driving. Well, here's what the quote says: Barbie has been criticized as a foreign force trying to drive a wedge between men and women.
This is from China?
Some moviegoers reported seeing men angrily leave the theater before the movie's end. And then this one is just I can't remember who it was, but it's just a male viewer in the U.S. saying it's 114 minutes of spiteful, bitter, mean-spirited, borderline unhinged hatred of men. And I was like, what? That is not the feeling I got. In fact, during that scene when America Ferrera, whatever her name in the movie is.
Oh, right. When they figure out how to unbrainwash all the Barbies.
Yeah, when she gives her kind of like long speech.
I want to read that.
You have it?
Should I read it now?
Yeah, because that speech, I had some thoughts about men in that scene.
Yeah. Okay, it's long.
Yeah, prepare yourselves.
Okay.
Put another poetic recitation.
She says, "It is literally impossible to be a woman. She's talking to Barbie. So she says, you are so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't think that you're good enough. Like we always have to be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but you also have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much, or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful. But never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard. It's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. I'm just tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. Like all the other like higher level dialogue aside, like that sucks if somebody is feeling that way.
Yeah.
And I think as I read that too, I'm like, why can't we get to a place where like somebody can hear that, a man can hear that and say, like, that sucks. Can I be with you in that? And just, can you tell me about it? Because I need to be able to tell you about mine too. Right. But like, it doesn't need to be this conversation where this exists because of you.
Right.
That's true. I mean, there's a lot of things that we do to each other, but I think like, why can't we just get to that? That's the part that hurt the most watching, is like, man, can we get to the good part? Like, can we get to the part where you just tell me how heavy this is, and I can care about it with you and be with you, and we can't solve each other's predicaments, but we can make it a whole lot easier, right? So that was probably my favorite part of the movie, but yeah.
So that one, like, I love that part. It was, to me, a lot of those ideas just in the various conversations I've had with women over the years, I've heard those expressed at various times. I thought that they did a great job putting it all in one. We're listening to it. It was a lot like, for me, I remember sitting there being like, whoa, like that's a lot that that they feel and that we're putting on them. And sorry to throw my sister Marianne under the bus, but I'm going to. She was asking me about it, and I was commenting about something about how there were some things in the movie that I thought really kind of highlighted for men this impossibility. And she goes, so what women deal with all the time. And Rob goes, that's not what it's about. And this was before you.
I said that?
Yeah. Rob clarified for my sister, Mike's not making a comment about the female experience. And he's not saying that that the male experience is harder or anything. He's simply commenting that there's some truth in the male experience there too. And that to me is what you're talking about. It's that idea of like, no, in me saying, hey, this is what's hard for me as a male. I'm not saying
therefore,
that yours is less or that yours is easier. It's just simply saying, no, there are things that are hard for me. Like I'm jumping all over the map. When Barbie's yelling at Ken and Ken's going back and forth and he yells at Barbie, you failed me.
She says, you failed me. And he yells angrily back, you failed me.
And I remember hearing it and I thought, oh, she totally did. She totally failed him.
Did she? We'll get to that later.
But in that moment, and they don't go back to it. And then actually Ken goes on to say some douchey things where I'm like, oh, well, now I can defend you less, Ken. But in that moment, I thought, no, like the way that Ken has done everything through that whole movie, just in the hopes that Barbie would notice him. Just in the hopes that Barbie would return the affection that he felt. And in Ken's mind, kind of being strung along as like you're going to use me when it's convenient for you and you're going to leave me when it's not. And that's cool. When it's girls' night, I guess I'm out all of a sudden. But when it's convenient, then great. Anyway.
Well, there's Matt, if I go back to that for a second, based on what you guys are saying, that speech, actually, I think they've acknowledged in things I've read. Like I was fighting tears off in that speech. Like, oh man, for two reasons. One was in the there's various parts where I thought specifically, oh, that's what I feel like as a man. And I thought there's a lot of dudes who've said those same words to me in different ways.
Because we're all twos.
We're all but I felt bad for me and for men. Like, oh, this, like they're describing my experience. And I felt like I have a daughter, I have a wife. I don't want that happening. If that's how they feel, I don't want that happening to them. Like, what the crap is wrong with us? And then that was kind of the moment where I was like, why do we always have to like seesaw? Why does it have to be like, well, someone's got to be on top? And that's what's interesting about this movie is in Barbie Land.
I think, is it Barbie Land or Dreamland?
No, it's Barbie Land.
It's Barbie Land.
Okay.
I think because Dream House,
Barbie Dreamland World, Casa
inside of Barbie
Casa Dojo,
Casa Dojo Mojo, Casa House, Dojo Mojo, Casa House, or something like that.
But anyway, like in there, it starts off and Barbie's at the top of the hierarchy, and Ken's are at the bottom. Then they go to the real world, and Ken finds himself. Plus, discovers this really cool thing called patriarchy, which that's like to me. I think, oh, that's the message to me. And then they go back where Ken's like, well, I'm doing this over here then, and blah, blah, blah.
Well, to me, he wasn't doing it to subdue.
Yes and no.
No, I don't think he had a good enough understanding of patriarchy to do that.
I don't think 95% of us have a good enough understanding of patriarchy to do that.
But meaning, so to me, his goal was not to subdue the other Barbies. It was to show the Kens and to introduce to the Kens, hey, there's this world and this thing called, patriarchy where we're actually respected. She asked me for the time. That was pivotal to Ken. But she actually asked me for the
3
time.
watches.
Right.
3 watches.
I think there's that. I think there's the element of wanting respect, but I think, and this is I think part of the message of this movie, which is why I felt like, why is anybody complaining about this? We should all be on board because, like Bell Hooks said, feminism is for everybody. So, and this is where I'll jump over to this idea of patriarchy, because I love that he's like, have you read these books on patriarchy or whatever he's got? And horses, like
they're just man extenders.
I mean, once I realized patriarchy wasn't about horses, I was a lot less interested.
But this is like, I think that what you're describing there. Well, here's what this is from Women's Media Center. It says, ultimately, Ken's frustration is a direct byproduct of the patriarchy he introduced into Barbie Land. It is Barbie Land. The introduction of said system made him feel as though he was owed affection and importance. And when that system was stripped away, he was left with nothing but frustration and a wealth of neglected emotions. It highlights how, which is funny because I think, no, I don't know if the system was stripped away by the end. I kind of felt like, it sounds like they just went back to patriarchy with the women on top in Barbie Land. When we finish, it's like, are we still?
I don't think so.
Okay, maybe not. But I think the neglected emotions were there to begin with.
Yes.
But it highlights how patriarchy can create entire scores of entitled men who neither fully understand their own entitlement. This is the part where I was like, I disagree with you. Nor how they respond when the foundations of patriarchy don't serve them in a way that it does other men. But this is what Bell Hooks gets at, is she's saying patriarchy. She has actually said in some of her writings that patriarchy is the worst thing for men specifically. Mm-hmm. She actually says patriarchy demands of men that they become and remain emotional cripples. Since it is a system that denies men full access to their freedom of will, it is difficult for any man of any class to rebel against patriarchy, to be disloyal to the patriarchal parent, or to be the parent female or male, or be that parent female or male. She also says patriarchy promotes insanity. It is at the root of the psychological ills troubling men in our nation, which I was like, yeah, totally. Because what it does, like, this is what I thought was interesting in the movie, is they show, I think they were showing the buffoonery, not of men, but of patriarchy, of this system that says, that does say, let's put men at the top naturally because we are men. And so men get to be at top.
Then we have horses.
Obviously, the extension of men. And then there's this scene when they start showing Will Ferrell and the owners of Mattel
at the end,
the tickle thing.
Well, the whole way through, they're all idiots.
Yeah, they are idiots. My favorite part, though, in reference to your point, is when he's like, oh, making decisions is hard. Sometimes I'm in a meeting, I just want to tickle everybody.
Yeah. Well, and he says the same thing that Ryan Gosling says, which is, once I had the leadership or the power, I didn't really like it.
Yeah.
But it is a system where you're supposed to crave it and want it. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think they were showing, what's interesting in a lot of things I read about the critiques of pro-men critiques, was it was saying, and this is showing this masculinity and this masculinity. I thought, no, that's not talking about masculinity.
Yeah.
It's talking about the system of patriarchy that says, just because I'm a dude, even if I'm an idiot or I don't want it, I should be at top, and I should want that thing at top. And if I don't go after that thing, then I don't even know who I am anymore. So Ken he doesn't know who he is in the beginning, other than an extension of Barbie.
Yeah.
Do you think, now that you're saying this, I'm wondering, because if obviously the current state of that system is like we're calling patriarchy because, historically men have been in that position of power, right? Is it a larger power hierarchy that patriarchy exists in? Because when you're talking about this, I'm like, that's kind of like a capitalism.
Well, that's
you know what I mean? That's kind of like
you should
just get ahead type of a thing, right? And almost like an achievement hierarchy or social status hierarchy that could drive anybody in the power position to the point of everything you're saying. I can't really be myself.
That's what I think it is. Like she calls, I can't remember. I have to find the specific wording she uses. Bell Hooks, when she describes patriarchy and how she's like, everyone laughs at it when I say it. Mm-hmm.
She says everyone laughs at my description of it?
At the wording, she's like, all I'm doing is accurately describing what it is. And it's people wouldn't like this word either because I won't find it. But it's like this kind of imperialistic, racist, patriarchal, geopolitical, like this whole thing of this long explanation of how this is a system that I think, yes, the idea, we call it patriarchy because it is males at the top.
Yeah.
But there would be other systems that exist that would have the same system in place, but probably flipped, and maybe it's the female at top.
Yeah.
I guess we could argue that initially Barbie Land was a matriarchy.
Yeah.
And what they're saying is the archies are bad in general,
Anti-archy.
which is why like I'm Kenough, right? Is like, oh, the idea would be, hey, look, this is that's why I love that scene with America, because I think I even said to Mike at some point, they're just describing the human experience.
Yeah.
Most of us go through some sort of thing like this.
Yeah.
That's whether we could swap out, like, I don't think men feel the same pressure, some probably do, to feel or to look perfect that females feel, but I think we feel a different kind of pressure to perform perfect or to this.
Yeah, I mean,
kind
all
of
the
perfect
Kens are like,
right.
Well, I was going to say,
except for Alan, who's totally forgettable.
Yeah,
I do think there's like I was having this conversation with a client the other day where I said, no, for men, I don't think it's nearly as overt as it is with women, right? That need to look a certain way. I think it's much more overt, the message with women, but with men, I think, yeah, we say, but then, if you're flipping reels or TikTok or Insta or, or shorts, we all see the same thing. If we see overweight, really it's overweight people, but overweight men, they're falling down, they're doing something, right? It's something you laugh at.
Yeah.
Other than that, they're all highly athletic. They're working out, they're fit. And I'm like, well, I don't look like any of those guys. Clearly I'm supposed to, though.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'm the chucklehead over there who's getting laughed at. Those are the two choices that I feel like the more I've spent time with reels and TikTok and shorts, that I'm like, oh yeah, clearly I don't fit in this world.
Yeah.
Right. Cause I'm not that. I like to think I'm not the chucklehead that gets laughed at all the time. Maybe I am. I don't know.
I mean, I wasn't going to say anything, but just as a point of reference, what she actually calls it is imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. And she said every time
an acronym for that?
She said every time she says it, people laugh. And she's like, don't laugh. I'm calling it what it is. And I think, that's true. There's mixtures of these things. Yeah. You have to throw in the white supremacy thing, because if you just put patriarchy, it would mean all men get to be above,
which is
all
not
women.
true. Right.
And there is a truth but even within that, like if the patriarchy says men over women, then there's still levels. And this, you could also get into the caste system thing that talks about, well, who's at the bottom of that caste, even if we're the male caste, but there has to be a bottom of the male caste. Right. So, but there's a couple more things that I feel like, oh, this is why I like what I think the message I took was saying, I was thinking, why do we seesaw back and forth like this? It's so stupid. And then I felt like by the end of the movie, I was like, oh, that's what they're saying. Yeah. This is so dumb. Yeah. That we would that somebody has to be on top. Not necessarily, right?
The first time I saw it, I left seeing much more the feminist message that was there, which again, like, I think my sister asked me, she's like, do you love that your daughter saw it? And I thought, yes, I do. Like, I thought that there was a lot of things that, like the speech you read. I thought, no, for me, I wanted my daughters to hear it so that they, no, you're not alone in that feeling. Yeah. And the thing you're feeling is real. It's not your imagination. Don't let someone convince you that you're seeing things. You're not seeing things. It's accurate. So that was really important to me. When I went back the second time, I thought, oh, this is not nearly the feminist movie I thought it was.
I feel like it's a lot for dudes. I want my boys to see it.
Yeah. Well, and I sincerely, I thought, no, it really does kind of exemplify this idea that extremes don't work.
Right. So here's a couple more things from St. Bell. St. Hooks? It doesn't matter.
St. Bell's better.
So I'll end with one of them. We don't need to end yet, but I'll save one for the end. So there is perspective that men oppress women, and there is a perspective that people are people, and we are all hurt by rigid sex roles. Both perspectives accurately describe our predicament. Men do oppress women. People are hurt by rigid sexist role patterns. These two realities coexist. Male oppression of women cannot be excused by the recognition that there are ways men are hurt by rigid sexist roles. Feminist activists should acknowledge that hurt and acknowledge that hurt and work to change it. It exists. It does not erase or lessen male responsibility for supporting and perpetuating their power under patriarchy to exploit and oppress women in a manner far more grievous than the serious psychological stress and emotional pain caused by male conformity to rigid sexist role patterns. So it's kind of saying it's not one or the other. It's faulty thinking. It's like my complaint with electric vehicles. I think we're just trading out one problem for another.
Yeah.
Eventually, we're going to run out of the resources to keep making our batteries. Plus, what do we do when how do we throw these away?
How do we dispose of these without
We'd have to do a radical shift in terms of we don't rely on cars anymore.
Yeah.
We became a compact
Then
walking
you'd be
society.
at the top of the hierarchy with your little cycle.
We're all on bikes, and Rob's the leader. So I like that kind of message. I think if you could, go to the movie and be entertained, because Ryan Gosling makes some of the most amazing
he's
faces.
so funny
in his dance scenes. It's like, I just want to be you.
Yeah.
But like, there's no need to be upset. Like, what's funny to me is I felt like even the scenes where they're showing men as idiots, there were a lot of parts where I was like, oh yeah, I've totally done that.
Oh yeah. No, that's as much as like, and that's the thing. Like often I think when, we talked about dads and their portrayal,
right?
A few episodes ago. And I think, the problem is with a lot of those portrayals is we've all met guys like that.
Right.
And chances are we've done it at some point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the stuff in here, I thought, I've done that kind of dumb stuff before. Right. Made assumptions or behaved in a certain way simply because I could, I guess. But to me, there is something like if you can't see this movie and learn something from it, you must be missing something.
Well, it's kind of funny. Like at one point, somebody, Bell Hooks makes an argument that like there are females, even feminists, who don't realize that they just want to flip things in a direction. Yeah. So they're just perpetuating patriarchy themselves by saying, well, no, now we have to be on top.
Right.
But I think there are plenty of people who get really upset, and males in particular, that feels like you're making fun of me and I don't know what to do with that, instead of recognizing it's not about you. And you're threatening a position that feels like, if I don't have this, I don't have anything,
right,
which is what Kent gets at.
Yeah.
Right. If I don't have this, then I have nothing.
Right. Then I have to go back to being and Ken.
Right. I have nothing.
Yeah.
Instead of it's Barbie and it's Ken.
Yeah.
I also read somebody's thing was like, this is just to sell Barbies. It's like,
well, they already are coming out with they already have all the clothes
new Barbies
from the movie for new Barbies and all sorts of stuff. So there is that.
Awesome.
But no, I do think that
capitalism wins.
Like if you find that you are like angered or offended by watching it, two things. Like I think that's a really perfect opportunity to ask yourself, like, what deeper issue is coming up for me? And I think secondary to that, you have to find a place where you can talk about it, where power is not in the equation. Does that make sense? Because like, I think for a lot of guys, like we're sitting here talking about some of the things that this brings up for us, because it really, is a choice there. You're sitting there and you're hearing something negative about really probably a depiction of extreme ends of the spectrum stereotypically, right? I mean, she's stereotypical Barbie. Like there's all these things that are kind of like, these are extremes, but there's everything in between in the movie if you watch, right? Like Will Ferrell's like, oh yeah, Midge, we forgot about you, right? And it's like, she's the pregnant one, and like, why did we forget about her? Why did she not sell, right? And Alan, right? Like I was like, was that Skipper's boyfriend? And they're like, nope, that's Ken's friend that, so all these people that get forgotten, right, and get pushed aside. That was interesting to look for all those characters because, like I said, those end up being kind of like, oh, that's maybe more what a lot of people identify with. A lot of people don't quite identify with the extremes as much, but there are a lot of people who do. So if you find yourself like, angry or offended or whatever, like find a place you can talk about that with somebody who's going to not just like hear you're part of it and enable any bad behavior, but also not somebody who's going to say, well, it's worse for me. Right.
Yeah.
Somebody who's going to say that sucks. Like, and I don't want that for you. Right. And here's how it is for me. And you can say to them, that sucks too. Like, I think any movement out of a system or a relationship like this has to be two people feeling like they can adequately address their insecurities and take courage to be part of a solution and a decision-making process together, right? Like I think what happens is they're both sides said in this, it's easier not to have to make decisions.
Right.
Right. And like Will Ferrell said it, one of the other Barbies said it. It's like, yeah, it isn't easy to make decisions and it isn't easy to talk together and it isn't easy to like, cooperate, but that's the only way out, right? It's the only way. It's like to share the responsibility and the freedom.
Right. No, there was that scene, right, where the Barbie says, I just sit around and I don't have to think about anything all day.
Yeah.
And when
but you're a physicist,
right?
Put on pants or something. Yeah.
But when I saw it, I thought, but that's funny because there are times my wife has said it. I've heard my sisters say it. They are tired of making decisions.
Yeah.
And so my wife was like, I don't care. I'm just not making a decision. Right? Like, whatever.
Yeah.
Just do it. And like, I've worked with a number of women in my office where they're like, look, I don't even care what he does. I just don't want to be the one making the decision. And so I thought, no, there is truth in that. Like, most of us hit a point where it's like, yeah, I don't want to make decisions here. It's not a bad thing. Bad thing if we're not allowed to make decisions. It's a bad thing if we're always that way. But we're all going to have those moments where we don't want to make a decision, where we're just like, nope, I'm tired. And it's not bad. It's like, yeah, it's expressed a lot.
I do like in this movie, and then we can get into any closing thoughts you have. I have 2 paragraphs I want to read. Oh, Belle. But I had one thought too that I really appreciated. One is I think we talked about this on the way home, Mike, was that like, people are getting so upset about these things? They're intentionally exaggerating them to emphasize a point.
Yeah.
Like, of course, that's not really what they're saying. They're saying, I have to show you, I have this many seconds to show you. I have to show you in a big way and then bring it back. But I loved when Barbie first starts to feel, and she can feel clearly what is grief or longing. And she said, it hurts, but it feels good, or something like that. But it's
good.
And I was like, oh, that's pretty powerful, I think, to say, oh, this is the kind of pain that you kind of want to feel. And then at the end, when she goes through this kind of life thing, it's all happy stuff. I thought, well, why not throw some clips of really sad stuff in there too? Because I think she was committing to like, I want to feel all that really difficult stuff.
This is the human experience.
Yeah, what she's saying is, I want the human experience. I want to move away from an archy.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to go into a lived human experience for what this will be. So to me, like I said, I really liked the movie. I want to watch it multiple times because I do that with movies anyway. I think it's hilarious, and I want my kids to see some of these messages and be able to talk about them with them. But before I give my closing speeches, do you guys have any thoughts? My 2 paragraphs.
Oh.
Or do you want me to just give my 2 paragraphs and you guys can give your thoughts on those?
Sure.
Whatever.
Okay, here goes. They're both from bell hooks at different places, and also include some stuff from Terrence Real. So she says, at one point, until we can collectively acknowledge the damage patriarchy causes and the suffering it creates, we cannot address male pain. We cannot demand for men the right to be whole, to be caregivers and sustainers of life. Obviously, some patriarchal men are reliable and even benevolent caretakers and providers, but they are still imprisoned by a system that undermines their mental health, which makes me feel really sad. But then she also says, to end male pain, to respond effectively to male crisis, we have to name the problem. We have to both acknowledge that the problem is patriarchy and work to end patriarchy. Terrence Real offers this valuable insight. The reclamation of wholeness is a process even more fraught for men than it has been for women, more difficult and more profoundly threatening to the culture at large. If men are to reclaim the essential goodness of male being, if they are to regain the space of open-heartedness and emotional expressiveness that is the foundation of well-being, we must envision alternatives to patriarchal masculinity. We must all change. So to me, those 2 things, I think actually is what Barbie movie was getting at. And I think it may be more pro-male than people considered. Much more pro-male. I think it's more pro-human. Like, this system we have does not, it's not helping us. We have to somehow break out of this system. But when we don't, Bell Hooks talks a lot about how people don't even use that word patriarchy very often. It's usually sexism or feminism or anti-male, or instead of naming this, the system is the problem. Male or female is not the problem. Yeah. I thought it was ironic that Terrence Real has this thing where he says, I mean, it's even harder for men. I think there's an irony in that, so tone that down.
But when you read his books too, they kind of emphasize that, where like it's like women need to speak up and men need to step up, and it's like men have more work to do, and it's harder anyway. But no, I think that I had a thought just a second ago, dude. I didn't have my energy drink right before we recorded.
This is what happens when you just drink water, Matt.
I know, it's not giving me anything. No, I think that there it is. I think that as men, we are survivalists, and we continually are not robbed, I guess, but like maybe you could say, like, based on this definition, we are robbed, or we rob ourselves of thriving experiences. And that's one thing I saw, I guess, in the reactions that you're describing, right? Where it feels like if you're critical of me, right, I have to cling to the thing that that keeps me in a good light, even if it's not good for me.
Right.
Or as Ken is like desperately like clinging to Barbie as she's saying, yeah, I don't feel the same way as you, right? Like there's so much work to be done, I think, as men to get out of the survival part. And that's the thing that I think is good about the movie. But like you said, any movie is going to be like a necessary ingredient to the conversation, but never sufficient, right? So this part that's like, man, if we could just expand another 30 minutes right here on like, okay, Ken and the Kens, and to some extent the men in the real world are kind of like, oh, I'm not going to die if this changes. I'm not going to die if you leave me. I'm not going to die if
I'm not going to sink into the void.
Yeah, like, and it starts off in kind of like, it's interesting, like we've talked about before. It starts off in kind of like a juvenile, like, oh, all right, I'm going to put on this sweater and I'm going to tickle people, and like it goes back to that place where like that's the last time I knew myself in a full way, right? And so let me start from there, and that's like the wholeness piece. And I think that like there's no way to thriving relationship, no way to thriving in life unless you can get out of that survivalist clinging to everything that you know, to this like deepening of who you are, and then seeing, you know, where do I fit and where do I not fit, and how do I contribute? I think that's a really important one, right? Like men really need an experience of letting go of what's familiar but not working, finding themselves, and then coming back and saying, where can I, you know, where do I contribute best? Where am I useful? Right. And I think I'm going to be useful here, right? And here and here. And I'm going to just maybe move into those spaces without trying to like soothe my own ego about it, because that's where the power comes from, right? Like in all the domination, but also not like shying away from knowing your own worth and saying like, is this good enough? Is this good enough? Right? Just do it. Like you're okay, right? Like this is important. And if you're whole and you want to contribute part of your wholeness to the world, do it.
So I had, I don't know, a couple of thoughts. One, I didn't catch it until I saw the movie the second time, right? She's stereotypical Barbie.
Right.
She doesn't feel like she fits either.
Right.
Because all of the other Barbies have jobs. And she's just stereotypical Barbie.
Yeah.
She's not good at any of it. And I thought, oh, how many, like, you know, for me, I thought of my daughters and my wife, like how often have they felt like I don't excel in this thing, and so I don't like, who am I guess.
Yeah.
That was, I don't know, impactful for me. There was one thing I thought they nailed, and I talked with my daughters about it after the scene where they're singing the Push song, and the Barbies decide to make them all jealous. I thought, no, that's pretty accurate. Like that's like, we don't know what to do when we're believing that you're really like wanting this interaction with me, and now you're up and gone. And it's not like Barbie wasn't the problem. It was Ken. And so that's how they're able to get them all fighting, right? Because Barbie's not the problem in that scene, at least not as far as Kens go. Right. It's the other Kens. They're the reason that they can't see that they're getting played. Right.
That's the part where we look like morons.
Right. But I also thought, yeah, kind of accurate though.
Yeah.
Like how often have I looked at another dude and thought, well, how come she's paying attention to him? It's not his fault. Like,
yeah,
he's just standing there. And so that one, to me, I thought that was a big one. But the other, and I think you and I don't hear this line the same way, but in the song I'm Just Ken, he says the line, am I not hot when I'm in my feelings?
Yeah, I hear it in a way that's like kind of a trap place. I want to be able to feel my feelings, but if I feel my feelings, I'm not hot anymore. So I'm not allowed to express feelings.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, that's what you're saying. Not like, am I not hot when I'm in my feelings?
No. Yeah.
No. Okay. And that's to me, I think, no, that's something that we've talked about before, that we've all had men in our office. And I know that I have, I would assume you guys have struggled with this idea of, if I express this emotion, I'm going to be viewed as less or as weak or as whatever. And so there's that thing. It's like, it's that idea of like, no, as men, we often don't feel like we're allowed to feel the things we feel. Right. I've said it on here before, and I say it to clients all the time. When you were having that argument and you said, yeah, but I'm allowed to feel what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And to me, I thought, no, that's huge. Like it's not a commentary on the other person. It's not even saying that the other person's wrong. Like you knew in that instance that your wife was right. It didn't change that you were frustrated.
Yeah.
Like, sure, she's right. I'm not going to suddenly feel better about the whole situation just because she's right. I'm still going to be frustrated because I was frustrated before. But it's that idea of like, no, we don't necessarily always allow ourselves to feel it. Not with other men, not with women, because it will diminish us. And that's, at the end, Ken is like, oh no, I am just as unknowing as I am about who I am and what my purpose is, I'm enough. And that was a big one. Now here's the last thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up.
Finally.
I know, right? The Barbie, how you thought it kind of just went back to the way it did.
Yeah.
Here's why I don't think it did, because the three Kens come up and like, so can we have like an important job on the Supreme Court? And she goes, no, but we can give you like a circuit court thing, right? Where before they weren't even allowed that kind of a responsible job.
Yeah.
So is it the kind of change that needed to be? No, like my thought was, we should have an election. If they get elected, then they should be on it. Like this is democracy, right? Not that that's how Supreme Courts work, but whatever. But I thought, no, but she is giving them a chance to actually participate in the process. Something they didn't have before.
Yes.
They just beached.
Sure.
Right. And now they actually get to participate in the process of Barbie Land. And so to me, that's a movement towards what it is. But ironically, I think, but that's part of why Barbie doesn't stay, because she knows, no, it's not.
Still know what
it's not enough.
It's not Kenough.
It's not Kenough.
I also thought Barbie's leaving because in addition to the gender war theme, the mother-daughter theme, and all the other themes, we need a Little Mermaid theme too. Part of your world.
My favorite line in that whole show, by the way, is when Margot Robbie says something and the narrator comes in and says, note to filmmakers, Margot Robbie's the wrong person to have say that.
She said, I'm not beautiful or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, with that line, I heard that and I knew it was written for like, a comedic moment. But I was like, look what you just did to Margot Robbie.
Right. That for some reason, she's not allowed to feel that way.
Right.
Because look at how you look.
Yeah.
You can't ever feel not pretty.
Yeah.
I do, because I remember, I thought it was funny, but we talked about that on the car at home too, because I remember thinking, but everyone's felt that way at some time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you actually are. We still don't believe it about ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a way, it's a weird, almost like a coveted type of exclusion, right? Like, well, you don't really get what we're talking about because you're so beautiful.
You're too pretty.
Like,
you can't understand what it's like for the rest of us.
Interesting. Now I'll say it.
Now you can say it.
So, spacemen, go watch Barbie movie. Become a more enlightened, better man.
And be Kenough.
Be Kenough. And come back next time and catch us on the Manspace. Down with the patriarchy. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Please remember to
rate
and
review.
Please, we desperately need it.